16 Hollow, located in Oakville, was a thriving community in the 19th century. Its development was centered around Dundas Street and 16 Mile Creek. However, crossing Dundas Street over the creek was not as easy as it is today. Dundas Street was a military road, and the government aimed to promote and expedite the settlement of the area. As a result, Crown and clergy reserve lands were dispersed throughout the township, particularly along Dundas Street. These lots were the first to be granted in the new Trafalgar Township, with shortened settlement duties of 18 months instead of the usual 2 years. This led to rapid growth and development in the northern part of the township, while the southern part experienced slower progress. By 1817, there were approximately 548 inhabitants in the township, mainly residing along Dundas Street. Throughout the 19th century, several crossroads settlements, hamlets, and villages were established along Dundas Street and its adjacent areas. These included Palermo, circa 1805, Munn's Corners, circa 1814, Post Corners, about 1817, later known as Postville and then Trafalgar, Chalmers Mills, circa 1825, later known as Proudfoot Hollow and then 16 Hollow, Snyder's Corners, circa the 1840s, and Glenorchy in the late 19th century. These settlements played a crucial role in the growth and development of the region. In 1825, George Chalmers arrived in the Hollow and opened a merchant shop at the crossing where Dundas and 16 Mile Creek met. He later constructed a dam on the creek and established both a saw and grist mill. The community became known as Chalmers Mills and flourished, hosting a tavern, stables, a distillery, a blacksmith shop, and several houses. However, Chalmers faced financial difficulties and ultimately sold his property to John Proudfoot, leading to a brief period when the community was called Proudfoot's Hollow. The town continued to grow, and a 3-story inn catered to stagecoach travelers and weary visitors. Tailors, weavers, barrel makers, wagon makers, and footwear manufacturers all found their home in 16 Hollow. However, the town faced a significant setback when the railway bypassed it, and Oakville in the southern part of Trafalgar Township experienced the growth instead. The collapse of the grain market dealt a fatal blow to 16 Hollow. By the 1880s, the mill had closed and only 2 houses and the church, Knox on the 16, remained. One of the central meeting places in the early community was the church. By 1846, the Hollow had a Presbyterian church on the east bank of the river. This church, which still stands today, is the only remaining building from the historical village. Initially a frame structure measuring 40 feet long by 30 feet wide and 18 feet tall, it underwent expansion in 1899 and received a brick veneer on the outside. Electric lights were installed in 1943, and in 1993 a basement was added to the church. Originally, wooden bridges over the mill dam were the only way to make the crossing over the creek, as it was much deeper than it is today. They frequently got washed out in the spring floods and had to be rebuilt. The Hollow had a large 3-story hotel to accommodate the many stagecoach travelers. It was also a place where the stagecoach needed to change horses. Tired horses had no hope of climbing the steep banks. Going down the steep road when it was unpaved, attempting to control a wagon and a team of horses, especially during inclement weather, must have been quite a challenge. About 1837, a Woodstock blacksmith named Jones had been sent to Toronto by Colonel Van Sibbert and other gentry for a load of iron plates to be used in fireplaces. On the steep hill, the load slipped, immediately killing one of the horses. Colonel Chalmers, together with Colonel Charles Bigger and others, raised the money needed to buy and hand over another horse so the blacksmith could continue on with his journey. There was no reliable bridge across the 16 Mile Creek until 1885, when Anson Buck, the Palermo doctor, designed and supervised the construction of a metal steel truss bridge. Until that time, the route used by the stagecoach, mail carriers, and business travelers followed the roughly hewn tracks carved out of the steep ravines rising on either side of the hollow. Anson Buck's Bridge was 80 feet long and was the first steel bridge in Halton County. It was a great improvement in spanning the 16-mile creek, although the steep hills on either side of the bridge remained and were still difficult to maneuver, of course. Dundas Ravine Bridge over the creek was finally replaced in 1921 with an elevated concrete bridge that eliminated the need to go down into the hollow to continue along Dundas Street. A 4-lane bridge was then built in 1960, replacing the previous structures. You can still walk, or ride on one side, up and down the steep slopes today as you descend into what is now known as Lions Valley. As a note, it's called Lions Valley not because there were once lions in the valley, but because in the early 1960s, the Lions Club of Oakville cleaned up and developed Lions Valley Park and donated it to the town of Oakville to use as a public park. At the top of the hill still sits the church built in 1846. The red line on the Google Earth images is a close approximation of the original Dundas Street route down into and out of Lions Valley before the first elevated bridge was built in 1921. A second bridge over the 16-mile creek is currently under construction nearby to connect two sections of the William Halton Parkway, further enhancing the crossing. Looking for more great content like this? Why not check out the Oakville Historical Society's website, YouTube channel, or Facebook and Instagram pages.